everyone and welcome. This is a video for hazardous and special products producers that have to register with us. I'm going to walk you through the registration form and explain what information needs to be completed on this form. We hope this helps you to understand better what information is required for each of the material types. And now I'm going to proceed to share my screen and share the form so I can start helping you with each of the steps. All right. So this is the first tab. This tab has to be completed by all the producers of all the material types. And all the information here is required. So this is the information that you're going to be completing if you are the primary contact. So you will be entering the information for the individual that will be the primary contact of the account. And you will be also entering the business information of the business. We will also ask you for the CRA number. So this is a number that is assigned by the Canada Revenue Agency. It's a unique number. And if you don't have it, I suggest you to talk to your tax or your accounting department, which will most likely will be able to help you with that information. The only two cells that are non-mandatory are these two cells. One is if you have already registered with us, you should already have a registration number. So you will be entering this number here. And if you were registered before with Stewardship Ontario, you will be entering the number here. These two are not mandatory. Again, if you don't have this information, you can leave it blank. The second table on this tab talks about billing contact information. This is in case if the invoice will have to be sent to a different person to be processed. So if that's the case, you will be entering the information of the individual that will be processing the invoice. If the primary contact will be also in charge of processing the invoice, there's no need for you to enter any information on this table. The last table here is a summary of the categories that are included on the HSP regulation, and you will be indicating which materials your company is obligated for. So, for example, if you are obligated for paints and coatings, you will be indicating here yes, and the table will also tell you which tab you will be completing. So this is applicable to all of them, and this is a table that is going to help you which tabs you will have to complete, and the rest will remain blank. You will have a next button at the bottom of each of the spreadsheets, each of the tabs. You can use this one to move from one tab to another one, but you can also click on the tab that you have to complete information. So I'm just going to use the next tab for now. And this is the very first tab. This tab is called the Automotive Tab because it includes the information for oil filters, oil containers, and antifreeze. This information is applicable to all of them, and is that producers may choose to report in two ways. If you are a producer that previously reported to Stewardship Ontario or to the Automotive Materials Stewardship Program, you may report in the same way you used to report to them. You can also use our weight conversion factors. So all you need to do is to enter the data the way you previously did with one of these two programs. If this is your very first time reporting on this data, you will be indicating actual units and weights. You cannot use the weight conversion factors. If you do not know the units that you supplied into Ontario, you can direct yourself to the registry procedure. We have a link here. We have a formula on this procedure that helps you to estimate the units that you supplied into Ontario. So if that is some information that you don't have or is not visible to you, this is a resource that you will have, and this is acceptable for you to provide to us. If you have been already reporting to Storage of Ontario or AMS and prefer to use your actual weights, you can also do so. And that is your decision to whether or not use the weight conversion factors that we have or to use your own weights. Now, the first question that we're going to be asking you is if you previously reported to Storage of Ontario or AMS, and if so, to indicate which programs you used to report before. This is applicable to all three materials: antifreeze, oil filters, and oil containers. So if you ever reported one of these three materials to any of these two programs, you will be indicating the name of the program that you reported to. So for illustration purposes, I'm going to select AMS. And then I'm going to start with the specific materials. So for oil filters, the first question that we have here is for you to confirm if your company is indeed a producer of oil filters. We also included the definition of an oil filter here for you to confirm if the oil filter that you supply into Ontario meets the definition. If you are a producer, you will be selecting a yes. And if you're not a producer, then you just respond no, and you don't have to continue reporting the information required for the oil filter section. If you are indeed a producer of oil filters, you will have to complete this information. So the information that is required is for you to enter the 2018 units, 2019 and 2020 units. And these are the two categories that are being used. Just for illustration purposes, I will be entering some numbers here. So once you enter the units here, two things are going to happen. So the first one is that the weights are going to be automatically calculated for you to help you convert the units into kilograms. And based on the information that you provide on this table above, the spreadsheet will be automatically calculating first if you do have to register or not, if you are above or below the threshold, and if you are above the threshold, if you do have a minimum management requirement for the first performance period. In this case, because of the amount that I entered into the table, you will see that this company will have a minimum management requirement. But if I enter smaller quantities, you will see a message where it confirms that you are not required to register. If you decide that you also prefer to report on actual weights, you will be entering the weights in here. And there's no need for you to enter the units, just the weights. The final question for oil filters is if you have engaged the services of a producer responsibility organization, and if you have questions on what they are or what they do, please contact us so we can help you to understand what services can they provide for you to meet the obligations under the regulation. If you have already engaged the services of our producer responsibility organization, you can just type the name of this company here. And keep in mind that for the registration purposes, you do not need to have a producer responsibility organization. And this is applicable to all the materials. Now, for oil containers, it's very similar in the sense that you will be indicating if you are indeed a producer of oil containers. If you say yes, you will continue to report. But if you say no, you don't need to complete the table that is below. In this table, you will be indicating the 2018 and 2019 and 2020 data indicators. And again, if you have previously reported to AMS and Stewardship Ontario, the weights will be automatically calculated here. So for illustration purposes, I'm just going to enter a couple of random numbers in here. So you see that the information is auto-populated here. It's already converted into kilograms, and based on the information that you entered here, we also have a cell that will be confirming whether or not you have to register or if you are exempted from registration. If you decide to use your actual weights, or if you have never reported before on oil containers, you will be just entering actual weights in here, and you will not be using the weight conversion. The final question is about the producer responsibility organization. If you already have one, you will be indicating the name of this company. But if this is something new to you and you don't have a producer responsibility organization that you have engaged, you can leave this blank for now. Now for antifreeze, we also included definition here. You will be confirming whether or not your company is a producer of antifreeze. If it's a no, you can stop completing the antifreeze section. But if it's a yes, you will continue with the next step. For antifreeze, please keep in mind that now obligated producers of factory fill of antifreeze in the automotive sector are not required to include the weight of the factory fill antifreeze when they are reporting to us for registration purposes. So right now, the new regulation is including factory fill antifreeze, which wasn't included before. But for the registration purposes, you will not be including this information in these tables, okay? So you will see two tables here. One is if you previously reported to the AMS program, and another one if you previously reported to the Stewardship Ontario program. So you will choose the table that has the program that you reported before. So in this case, if you have reported to AMS, you will be using this table. And for illustration purposes, again, I will be indicating here a couple of numbers. So you will see again that the weights are going to be automatically populated in these columns, and you don't have to do anything else. If you decide that you want to use your actual weights, you don't have to do this. You can just report on the weights in here, all right? If you previously reported to Stewardship Ontario, you will be using this table, and the reason why we have two tables is because Stewardship Ontario and AMS had different categories. So we wanted to help you and mimic the way you used to report before to one of these two programs. If you have never reported to any of these programs, you will be using any of these two tables and will be just using the actual weight column because you will need to enter the actual weight information, okay? This is a cell that's going to be confirming whether or not you're obligated to register based on the information that you entered above. And then the last question is for producer responsibility organizations. If you have engaged the services of RPRA, you will be indicating the name of this producer responsibility organization. But if you haven't, there is no need for you to have one before the registration deadline. But keep in mind that you may need to engage the services of one of the pros if you have to register with us. Now we're going to go to paints and coatings. So for paints and coatings, we have also included some information for you to help you determine whether or not you are a producer. We also have some exclusions. And keep in mind that for this category, the primary packaging is including, but does not include corrugated and boxes, plastic film, shrink wrap, or printed materials. There is a change in regards to how you used to report before and what the regulation has included. And the change is that all the data that has been supplied to the industrial, commercial, and institutional sector is now included. So keep that in mind when you report for paints and coatings. The first question that you will see here is a question about the confirmation of whether or not you are a producer of paints and coatings. So if that's a yes, then you will just be indicating a yes, but if it's a no, then you don't have to complete this tab. You can keep going with the tabs that are indeed applicable to you. So in this case, for illustration purposes, I will answer yes. And similar to the automotive materials, producers of paints and coatings may choose to report in two ways. If you have previously reported to Stewardship Ontario or to Product Care Association, you can report in the same manner that you used to report before and use the weight conversion factors that we have embedded on this spreadsheet to convert the units that you report into kilograms. If you do not know the units that were supplied into Ontario, you can also use the link to the registry procedure. This registry procedure has a formula that will help you to calculate the units supplied into Ontario based on population. So you will just click here and the link will redirect you to the document that has this information. If you have never reported before on paints and coatings, you will be using actual weights, not the weight conversion factors. Now, the second question is, if you have previously reported to one of the previous programs, such as Stewardship Ontario or PCA, and if so, you will be indicating which one you have reported before. If this is the very first time that you will be reporting, then you will be selecting none of the above because you simply haven't reported to any of these two other programs. For illustration purposes, I'm just going to select Product Care Association. And then you will see two tables here. So one table here and another table here. This table will include the information that is being supplied to consumers in Ontario, excluding the industrial, commercial, and institutional sector. The second table is where you will be including the data that is associated to the industrial, commercial, and institutional sector. And this is a new requirement. So this information is new to you. Probably you haven't reported before. If this is applicable, you will be reporting in the two tables, but if not, you most likely will be just reporting on the very first table. So I am going to enter a couple of random numbers in here for illustration purposes. So you will see that the weights will be calculated for you automatically. And there's nothing else for you to do here. If you decide that you want to use your actual weights, you can simply enter the actual weights in here. That's not an issue. The whole purpose of you reporting on the units is to help you calculate the weights, but the weights is what actually matters on this regulation. So you can do these two things if you have never reported before. So you will be using these columns. Based on the information above, the spreadsheet will be calculating whether or not you are exempted from registration or if you do have to register indeed. So based on the numbers that I entered on the tables above, this company will be required to register as a paints and coatings producer. Then there's also the question about the producer responsibility organization. Again, if you do not have one yet, and if you don't know what they are, please contact us. You do not have to have a producer responsibility organization before the deadline to register, but it is important for you to understand what services they provide and if you do need to work with one of them. Now I'm going to talk about pesticides. For pesticides, we included the definition and the exclusions, so things that are not considered pesticides. We have also listed these ones here. The first question that you will see is a confirmation of your company, of your company's status as a producer. So if your company is a producer, you will be responding yes. And if not, you will just say no or leave it blank. You don't need to complete this step at all. Similar to the automotive materials and paints and coatings, the producers can choose to report their supply data of the pesticides as it was previously reported to Storage Ontario or Product Care. If you have reported before to any of these two programs, you can report in the same manner, and you can use the weight conversion factors that we have embedded on this spreadsheet. This option is only available to the producers who have reported their historical supply data to one of these two programs. If this is your first time that you are reporting, you will be entering actual weights. If you do not have the units and do not know how to calculate the units, you can also use the formula that is on the registry procedure here. This is based on population. So you can go to Appendix A of this registry procedure, where you can find the information on how to calculate the units for this type of material. And honestly, this registry procedure, like the formula that is included here, is applicable to all the materials. Keep in mind, there is also a change in this regulation in regards to how you have been reporting before, and is that the data that you will be reporting this time and going forward will include the data from all sectors, including the industrial, commercial, and institutional sector. So similar to paints and coatings, the producer will be entering the volumes associated to what they reported on 2018 and 2019 and 2020 to consumers in Ontario. And the second table is associated to the volumes that you previously reported, previously supplied to the IC&I sector, if this is applicable to you. If this is not applicable to you, you can leave this table blank and just report what you previously reported to PCA or Stewardship Ontario. For illustration purposes, I'm just going to enter a couple of numbers in here. In this case, this table is shorter just because the conversion between liters or kilograms is 1-to-1. So there's no need to enter the units, just report how is on each of these headers. And then you will see a confirmation of the registration requirement here. based on the information that you supply on the tables above, the spreadsheet will be calculating if you are above the threshold or below the threshold to register. Now, the data that I entered here above is above the threshold, so this company will be required to register as a producer. The final question for pesticides is about the producer responsibility organization. If you have engaged the services of a producer responsibility organization, you will be indicating the name of this company. If you are not familiar with this concept, if this is new to you and you need to learn a little bit more, you can contact us, but keep in mind that you do not need to have a producer responsibility organization engaged by the registration deadline. So you can leave this blank for now, and you can contact us and ask what the producer responsibility organizations can do for you. Now I'm going to go and talk about solvents. So for solvents, we have also included the definition in here. There is a confirmation for you to respond whether or not your company is indeed a producer of solvents. If you respond no here, then you are not required to keep going with the rest of the questions on this tab. But if you do say yes, you will continue with the rest of the questions in here. Producers of this material have the option to report how they used to report before, if they have reported previously to Stewardship Ontario or Product Care Association. If you have previously reported to one of these two programs, then you can also use the weight conversion factors. But if this is the first time that you are reporting at all, then you will be reporting on actual weights. If you do not have the units that were supplied into Ontario, then you can use the formula that is on the registry procedure. And you can find it on the Appendix A. This is based on population. And this is a very simple formula that you can apply so you can get the number. There is a change in the regulation, and is that all the information associated to the industrial, commercial, and institutional sector is now included and has to be reported. So you will see that there is a specific table for you to report this specific information. The next question is, if you have previously reported to Stewardship Ontario or to Product Care, if this is the case, you will be indicating the name of the program that you were reporting before. If you have not reported to any of these two programs, you will be indicating here none of the above. Now, for illustration purposes, I'm going to select, let's go with Stewardship Ontario this time. And then you will see two tables in here. The first table is where you are going to report the supply data to consumers in 2018, 2019, and 2020, excluding the ICNI sector, because the second table is where you are going to specifically report on the ICNI sector if this is applicable to you. Now you will be reporting on the volume. So for illustration purposes, I'm just going to enter some random numbers. And you will see that the weights will be calculated here for you automatically. If you decide that you want to use your actual weights, or if this is the first time that you will be reporting, then you will be indicating the weights in columns F, G, and H. Then you will have a confirmation of registration requirement. So based on the information that you provide in the tables above, this spreadsheet will be calculating whether or not you are above or below the threshold for solvents and if you have to register or not. So I'm just going to quickly enter a couple of numbers in here. So in this case, the producer is required to register as a producer of solvents. The last question for this material is the producer responsibility organization. If you have already engaged the services of a producer responsibility organization, you will be indicating the name of this company. If not, you can leave this blank. You do not need this information for registration purposes. But if you do have questions about what they do and who they are, please contact us. Now we're going to talk about pressurized containers. We have 3 here. We have the refillable pressurized containers, the non-refillable pressurized containers, and the propane containers as well. So I'm gonna start with the refillable pressurized containers. We have included here the definition for you to keep in mind, then confirmation of your status as a producer. If you are indeed a company that is a producer of refillable pressurized containers, you will be selecting yes. But if that's a no, you will be just saying no, and you do not need to complete the information associated to this specific section. Now, if you have previously reported this information to Stewardship Ontario, you will be indicating here if you have done so. If this is your first time that you are reporting, then you will say no, because you have never reported to Stewardship Ontario. So just for illustration purposes, I'm gonna say yes. And you will also find 2 tables here. One is for you to enter the supply data to consumers in Ontario in 2018, 2019, and 2020, excluding the IC&I sector, which is the industrial, commercial, and institutional sector. And the second table is specific to industrial, commercial, and institutional sector, because this is a new requirement. This wasn't obligated before with Stewardship Ontario. So I'm going to enter some random units here, just to show you how the tables work. In this case, because you have previously reported to Stewardship Ontario, then the weights are going to be shown here. If you have anything to report here, you will be also indicating if you like the units associated to the IC&I sector. And then this is a confirmation of the registration requirement in this cell. The last question for this category is if you have engaged the services of a producer responsibility organization, but if you have not, you can leave this blank for the registration purposes. If you do have to register, then you will most likely want to understand what they can do for you, what services they have, and if you have to engage the services of one of these companies. So if you have any questions, please let us know. Contact us via email, or you can give us a call. We will be happy to help you out. Now for the non-refillable pressurized containers, this is also similar to the refillable category, but it has a small difference, which I will tell you right away. The first information that you will find is the definition, a confirmation of your status as a producer. So if you are indeed a producer, you will say yes. If you're not, you can say no, or just leave this section blank. Then there is a question about whether or not you have previously reported to Stewardship Ontario, then if you have, you will say yes, and if you haven't, you will say no. So you can select the answer that is appropriate to your situation. And then you will also find two tables here, one for the data that has been supplied to consumers in Ontario in 2018, 19, and 20. And then on the second table, you are going to report, if applicable, the data associated to the industrial, commercial, and institutional sector. So if you supplied anything to this sector in 2018, 2019, and 2020, you will be reporting this here. But if this is not applicable to you, you can leave this table blank. So now for illustration purposes again, I am going to enter some numbers. And you will see that the weights will be populated automatically in here. If you select no, then the weights will not show up here, because that means that you will have to enter the actual weights, because this is the very first time that you are reporting on this data. So now, okay, I'm gonna enter some weights in here. Just because this formula works with the weights, it's all about the weights. So based on this information, this company is required to register as a refillable pressurized container. And this specific material has a minimum management requirement. So in this case, based on the information that is being provided on the tables above, this company will have a minimum requirement to collect and process 916 kilograms of refillable, non-refillable pressurized containers. Then the last question here is about the producer responsibility organization. If you have engaged the services of a producer responsibility organization, you will be indicating the name of such company. But if you have not, you still have time, and you can ask us any questions that you have about producer responsibility organizations. This is not a requirement for you to register, so you can still send us your registration form even if you don't have a producer responsibility organization of any of the materials. So this is applicable to all the materials. Now for the refillable propane containers is a much easier registration. You will be indicating or confirming your status as a producer. So in this case, I am going to say yes. If you say no, then you don't have to continue with this section. The next question is that you will have to indicate the date, which means the month and the year, when your organization first supplied refillable propane containers to consumers in Ontario. So you just need to enter the month and the year. And then you will be indicating if the gross annual revenue of your company generated from the products and services in Ontario in 2020 is greater than $2 million. So if that's a yes, then you will be registering. If and if that's a no, you will just be indicating that you just simply didn't generate this annual revenue. The last question for this material is about the producer responsibility organization. If you have engaged the services of a pro, you will be indicating the name of that company. But if not, you can leave this cell blank because this is not a requirement for the registration, but you will want to understand a little bit better what they do and what services they provide to producers. So you can ask us any questions and we can help you to understand what they can do for you. Now, fertilizers. We have included the definition of what a fertilizer is under the HSP regulation. The first question that you're going to answer is a confirmation of your status as a producer. If you are indeed a producer based on the definition and your residency, then you will be entering yes. If not, you do not have to complete this step, so you can stop answering the questions below. Then you will be asked a question about your organization, when your organization first applied fertilizers to consumers in Ontario. So you will be indicating the month and the year in this cell. And then you will be indicating if the gross annual revenue of the company generated from products and services in Ontario in 2020 was greater than $2 million. So if that's the case, you will say yes. If that is not the case, you will just say no. And then finally, you will be indicating the name of the producer responsibility organization. If you have engaged services of one of them, if you have not, you can simply leave this blank for registration purposes. The last category is the mercury-containing devices. So we also included here the definition of each of these three materials. And what you are going to be doing is that you will be indicating for which material you are the producer of. So it's simply saying yes or no, depending on your obligations and your specific situation. If this is a section that does not apply to you, you don't have to complete this tab. You can continue with the following tab. If you are obligated for any of these three materials, then you will be indicating if the gross annual revenue generated from products and services is in Ontario in 2020 is greater than $2 million. If that's a yes, you will be indicating yes. And if it's a no, then you will be indicating no. And the last question is about the producer responsibility organization. So if you have engaged the services of a producer responsibility organization, you can enter the name of such company. But if you do not know what a producer responsibility organization is, what they can do for you, please give us a call or contact us so we can help you to understand. This is not a requirement for registration purposes, but if you do have to register, you may want to understand what services they provide because you may need to work with one of them. The next tab is a summary of what you have entered on the previous tabs. So the only materials that have a minimum management requirement are oil filters and non-refillable pressurized containers. So based on the information that I provided before, there is a management requirement for non-refillable pressurized containers, and this is just the information that I got from the tab associated to pressurized containers. The second table is a summary of what you have previously reported on the tabs and the fees associated to the materials. So you will see that based on the information that I provided before, I see the average of the information that I provided on the previous tabs, and then the fee associated to each of the materials. There is a total at the very end. And just so you know, these fees are calculated based on on the materials that were previously included in the Stewardship Ontario rules, which means that only includes the kilograms considered for fee calculation based on what it was previously obligated before, and not based on what you are now reporting on the IC&I sector. If you are curious about more information about the registry fees, we have also included a link for you to see the information associated to the fees. And the final tab is an executive attestation. So this is an embedded PDF document that you will double click on it, and a PDF form will open up. This document has to be completed by an officer of the corporation that has the authority to bind the corporation. So if you are asking yourself if you have that authority, you can check internally with your colleagues or with your manager, so they can provide you with that information. You have the option to protect the information that you are providing on this file by password protecting this file. We have included the instructions on how to password protect this file in this last tab. So if you follow the instructions here, it's a very easy process for you to add a password. And when you send it to us, you will be also sending us the password for us to be able to open the file. You can send the password on a separate email just for safety purposes. And if you're curious to know about the calculators, the weight conversion factors that we used in all the previous tabs, we do have a list of all of them here for all the materials that have associated weight conversion factor. So with this, I have finished walking you through the registration form. Hopefully this is helpful for you to understand better what the requirements are, how do you have to report, and what information you have to report. If you still have questions, you can call us, or you can also email us at registry@rpra.ca. Thank you and have a good day.